Tell you the truth, I probably wouldn't have believed it either. After all, I did live a pretty extraordinary life.
Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin. I'm a film critic and you're watching the Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and film culture and how to see somebody pick those things apart, please consider subscribing. Today, we're going to talk about DMX. As I'm sure you're aware by now, the beloved and iconic rapper passed away this past week. He was an absolute titan whose body of work continues to stand the test of time, a pop cultural figure whose complexity and passion transcend music. This man had 2 #1 albums in the same year in 1998. In 98. But as much as I imagine many of you have been bumping his albums over the past few days, many of you also were probably reminded of another unique fact about X. That he was, at one point, not only a humongous figure in music, but also a genuinely bankable movie star for a time. Both I and some of my best friends basically halted our previous watching habits for the weekend and started revisiting some of DMX's best on-screen work, but also some of his worst. As such, I thought the friendly Dom thing to do would be to isolate the 3 DMX movies you absolutely must see this week if you want to relive his cinematic glory days and which ones you ought to avoid. If you're like me, you might be tempted to watch Beyond the Law, the 2-year-old DTV action flick reuniting DMX with his Exit Wounds co-star Steven Seagal. But honestly, folks, dipping into late period Seagal is a hazardous and dangerous activity, and if you're watching this, I love you far too much to even ironically suggest you embark upon such a thing. But the impulse to revisit DMX as an action star is a completely normal thing. So with Beyond the Law immediately and smartly stricken from your memory, you may find yourself wanting to revisit the Andre Bartkowiak trilogy of films from producer Joel Silver that each tried in vain to blend the worlds of Hong Kong action flicks with hip-hop. If you start with the beginning and end of that trilogy, Romeo Must Die and Cradle to the Grave, both featuring DMX alongside Jet Li, you may get prematurely and incorrectly excited. Because, while in the abstract that pairing sounds tight as hell, in execution both films leave quite a bit to desire. Bartkowiak, who has a pretty respectable pedigree as a cinematographer before venturing into a strange career as an action director, has a sensibility that doesn't mesh particularly well with Jet Li's fight choreography. Producer Joel Silver, for whatever reason, was a little too obsessed with reinventing the wheel and pushing this X-ray vision concept in Romeo Must Die that worked much better in later Mortal Kombat games, but just distracted from the way Lee works on screen. Also, given the prevalence of the Stop Asian Hate movement and, common human decency, both of these films are entirely too chock full of grating and unfunny bits of racial humor. Revisiting any random 10-minute chunk of either film has the potential to set Black and Asian relations back decades. Also, DMX is barely even in Romeo Must Die. He is much more present in the soundtrack than the picture. He has a much more prominent role in Cradle to the Grave, and that movie, despite its many other foibles, is a pretty strong showcase of his charisma and why he was so compelling on screen, even if it is otherwise completely missable. No, if you want to watch a DMX action film, you have to watch Exit Wounds. First of all, it's the exact last moment in history that Steven Seagal is still genuinely entertaining and not only ironically so. And Bartkowiak does a much better job of masking Seagal's growing weaknesses on screen than he ever did highlighting Jet Li's strengths. Plus, it's got so much to like. Bill Duke is in it, so is Dragon. There's the precisely correct amount of both Tom Arnold and Anthony Anderson. Also, it has some of my favorite DMX being on screen while a DMX song is playing moments. An absolute staple in every single movie he's ever been in.
Who are you here to see?
Sean Rollins.
And you are?
Friend.
Plus, it's got this really dope-ass scene with the shotgun. There's genuinely, seriously nothing stopping you from watching Exit Wounds right now. You can cut this video off and go watch Exit Wounds and come back later. I'll be here. Or don't come back at all. It's fine. You've got what you needed. See Exit Wounds. But admittedly, it is a far worse film than the other 2 films I'm about to talk about. The first being the most obvious answer to the question, what DMX movie should I watch this week? And that answer is Belly. For years, I always looked at Belly as a movie that looked amazing but was hollow and silly. And on more than one occasion, I've been known to describe the film as going hard on mute. But this time revisiting, it's honestly a quiet masterpiece. Hype Williams is firing on all cylinders, delivering incredible visuals alongside cinematographer Malik Saeed, creating a world that is immersive, glossy, and haunting. Vibes-wise, Belly feels a little bit like Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets, with the relationship between Nas and DMX's characters, Sincere and Buns, mirroring that of Harvey Keitel and De Niro's. And sure, Nas is a pretty crummy actor, as are much of the cast, but DMX is so insanely compelling in this film. Tommy Buns Bundy is a profoundly despicable person, but his arc of redemption, culminating in the film's surprising and affecting third act, is so much better than one might otherwise expect from a gangster movie helmed by a music video director. Plus, it's got DMX, Nas, and Weebay from The Wire watching Harmony Korine's Gummo for literally no other narrative reason, and you kinda can't beat that level of cinematic specificity. I have no earthly idea why Hype has never directed another feature film, but I wish it could be rectified immediately, even if it's a major bummer he wouldn't be able to reunite with DMX. But finally, we're gonna have to address a DMX film where he plays an even worse, more despicable character from an even more underrated director. That's right, we're going to talk about Ernest Dickerson's Never Die Alone. The film, adapted from a Donald Goines novel, is one of the bleakest, most deeply cynical neo-noir thrillers I have ever seen in my life. With its gritty textures and sickly color palette from cinematographer Matthew Libatique, it is a film I cannot believe got made, given how grotesque and blunt its worldview and outlook remain. In the film, DMX plays King David, a small-time hood who thinks of himself as a towering figure. To explain the core contradiction of this sickeningly malicious individual with the fascinating gait with which DMX portrays him, one need only see the way David Arquette, who plays a writer whose life is entangled with kings, describes the man.
If he just could have been there, he had this nobility.
Never Die Alone is the kind of operatic crime epic where the main character is posthumously narrating the film from a mixture of audio tapes he recorded of his own unedited autobiography and actual thoughts from beyond the grave. We witness this interesting man cut down by violence and then flash back throughout his life story as Arquette listens to the tapes he left behind. What unfolds is a disturbing and raw portrait of a man cursed by his surroundings whose insecurities and hang-ups push him to enact indefensible horrors on those he claims to love, only to realize the error of his ways entirely too late to avoid the fatal fate he so richly deserves. The movie itself is almost cartoonishly cruel, plainly depicting horrors in such a banal way that even its shreds of dark humor aren't enough to ever lighten the mood. Like, okay, there's a bit where Jennifer Skye plays a small-time actress on a glossy cop show who gets addicted to heroin, and literally 2 years prior to the film's release, Skye herself was really playing an identical part on Fox's short-lived Miami Vice redux Fastlane, and that bit of irony would be enough to make me chuckle otherwise, if it wasn't immediately followed up by his character leaving her behind to corrupt a new woman in worse ways solely because of how scared he is by his startling capacity to feel love for her. It's a fucked up movie. And I realize that of all the options available to you to watch a movie in DMX's honor, it's the one that sounds the least fun. Honestly, if you're not into exploring such bottom-feeding nihilism, then by all means, revisit Cradle to the Grave. It's a riot, the kind with property damage and lots of loss of life. But outside of his beautiful little cameo in Chris Rock's Top 5, which you should definitely also check out, to me, it's the film that most closely captures the dichotomy at the heart of DMX's public persona and the raw, unedited texture of his hoarse vocal delivery over Dame Grease production. It's a darker and hotter hell than anything DMX himself committed to wax, but it's also perhaps the most perfect distillation of the undeniable presence he brought to the movies he starred in. He's going to be missed for his music, first and foremost, obviously. He was an incredible musician and he has a great body of work. But don't ever forget the way that this man lit up the big screen. Really sucks that DMX is dead. Gonna miss him like crazy. R.I.P. DMX. Go out and stream one of his albums right now if you're not doing so already. And check out at least one of these 3 movies. I think I gave you a good mix of movies that are like fun and watchable and also, deeply affecting. And, I don't know, if you're a braver soul than me, check out Beyond the Law. I'm going to do it at some point, but I don't think I deserve to do that to myself at the moment. Steven Seagal is just a lot in his later years. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to get notifications when I put out new videos. And if you have any thoughts about DMX you want to share or anything like that in the comments below, please do so. I love talking to you guys. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Please be safe, be good to yourselves, watch out for each other, get vaccinated, all that good stuff. Bye.